The Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Beacon, a home for those who have a passion for filmmaking and the unusual. Paraware, apparel for the action-seeking paranormal investigator. Dragonfly Art and Soul for all of your magical, metaphysical, and spiritual needs. Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, the paranormal, and so much more. You know what? It's a Tuesday night. Where else would you be? What else would you be doing? Bowling. It's on Tuesday nights, right? I had many years. Anyway, hey, I want everybody for being here. We got a great guest. That's an iridescent guest. That's what kind of a guest we have today. And I am so thrilled. He agreed to come on because we're going to talk something that you know what? Ethics in mediumship and all that other stuff. I really need to start having some kind of integrity in the paranormal field as a whole. Before we get into that, before I bring my stuff, thank two brand new sponsors. So I really quickly want and say thank you. They do great t-shirts. As I'm wearing one of their t-shirts right now. They're just really fun couple that together, and I love them so much. Thank you so much, and I really do appreciate it. Next, I want to thank Beacon. Beacon is now a brand new sponsor of the show, and Mr. Pittman has gone on to go and make sure that anything we really need, he takes care of. And Beacon, in all honesty, won't start signing up for their streaming, going anywhere else, because it is for filmmaking and the paranormal or the unusual, that's find it. So thank you guys. I really appreciate, really do. It's so great. And I thank everybody that's in the room today. And I'm going to bring our guest on. I have to first say, I love this guy. You want to know I love this guy? It's not just because of the fact that he's a paranormal guy. You know what I mean? It's not. He is a paranormal, but he's a Civil War guy. And what has been so great was the fact that he took time out of his life to turn around and say, "Hey, I'm going to take you to some places. I'm going to take you to a couple, some battlefields that I had never been at." I was able to go and complete a bucket list with this gentleman. This gentleman took me to places where I would have never been able to see. I've been on every battlefield that my great-great-grandfather had fought upon, and he took me to the last couple battlefield sites that I never thought in a million years I'd be able to do this. So I forever owe this guy. This guy is he's just so kind, knowledgeable, and he's amazing. But anyway, enough about waxing poetically and what our other hobbies are. And you know what? I want to tell everybody that our guest tonight is a former industrial chemist, Six Sigma Green Belt, laboratory information technology site expert. He's also trained in audio, video, and distance learning technologies. He is trained also he's achieved his certified video conferencing engineer certificate. And since joining the Center for Paranormal Research and Investigation, CPR for short, Brad has added to his skills, which include the pursuit of data that surround events considered paranormal by nature. by organizing and indexing and being able to experiment with all of these scientific uh, explorations, these scientific methods, he's been able to go and draw some great conclusions. But what I love about him is he doesn't just look at it from that point of view. He looks at it from all different points of view, and that's what makes this show tonight exciting, because we're going to learn what he knows, what he's looking at, some of the theories that we've gone into, but also we were just talking off the air of some of the unbelievable personal experiences we've had. So anyway, please bring on the one and only, my good friend that I am so happy that he said he was going to come on the show today, Brad Bradley. Brad, how are you, my friend? I'm so happy that you're here tonight. I can't tell you. Really can't tell you how thankful I am that you're here. And I just want to tell you that lunch that we spent, Frank, Heather, and I, we were in Virginia, and we spent with you, was one for the books, because I learned so much in that short period of time that I had never thought about than I have in many, many years. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Brad, what is going on in the great world of Brad Bradley and CPRI?
Well, let me try to make my head fit back on the screen after all those accolades you gave me
And
there.
everything I said to you
Uh,
was true. Everything I said about you was 100% true.
well, I really appreciate that, especially coming from the esteemed Tim Shaw.
Aim
Um,
higher.
I, yeah, uh, well, what's going on with us? We're always out trying to collect data, analyze data, and we're a bunch of data wonks. That's okay because we think that's the direction that we need to be going so that people take this seriously.
I
And
agree.
the Center for Paranormal Research and Investigation is an organization that it's made up of current and former scientists, engineers, police officers, medical professionals, fire professionals. We have a gamut of people, a whole list of people that we can go out and really bring to bear a lot of different skill sets to see what's going on. And there's Frank. Hello, Frank. But yeah, the that's how that's kind of the organization in a nutshell. And we have about 40 of us that we're spread out across the state, all the way from Bristol to Eastern Shore, Virginia. That's pretty much from New York to Detroit. If you get that,
Right.
that's how wide Virginia is. But we also, our organization pretty much strives to find out exactly what people think they're seeing and hearing, and we're trying to figure it out. We figured that, hey, if people see it and they hear it, then there's got to be something measurable there. So we're trying to figure out exactly what kind of correlations we might have between what people think they see and hear things, and then also the data that we're collecting around that, different sensor data like barometric pressure,
Hmm.
temperature, stuff like that. Radiation data, we're collecting that now too, and geomagnetic field data, and just a whole gamut of things. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're hoping right now. We've seen a lot of correlations,
Hmm.
a lot of things line up, but now we're looking for the cause. We're looking for that mechanism. We're not looking for the why. That gets into the metaphysical side of it. That's not what we're looking for. We think we need to first figure out how it's happening. And once we figure out how it's happening, the next step is to go for the why. And that's kind of how we're going in.
I think it's totally fascinating, because I always tell people, listen, just because you've experienced something, number one, it may not be metaphysical or paranormal in nature. There's a high percentage chance of it being something that's organic. But number two, by collecting this data, this full gambit of data, now you can actually go and look for repeatability. You can look and understand that, okay, under these certain conditions, X, Y, and Z happened. That is like incredible to me. Too many people, unfortunately, they watch the ghost shows. I don't want to say anything bad about them. Yours truly's been on them. I don't, but
So have I.
yeah. But the problem comes in is the fact that they're using rudimentary gear that they don't understand how it works. First of all, why and how it works. Number two, they're out there going and taking everything just flat. They're not looking into the cause. I remember when the Kling brothers first came to Fort Niagara and on their Ghost Lab show. And they were the first ones that introduced me to data sets. And they were telling me some of the stuff that they were collecting. And I was just, my mind was blown because I never thought about that stuff. What do you think? What do you think is the next step when we start looking at all of this? When we look at correlations, what have you found that really seems to be a constant in so many, I'll just put in air quotes, hauntings or paranormal phenomena?
Well, one thing that I have to do this with a little bit of a caveat because I'm going to get into this other piece in a little bit. But
Oh, that's good. That's good.
The thing that we have noticed right now, we've kind of looked at activity as being non-interactive, which a lot of people call residual, which is kind of, I had to put that in air quotes because it might be residual, it might not be residual.
Right,
it's
right.
just
Absolutely.
it's just not interacting with the environment around you. And but then we have the whole interactive side of things, where a door will open, a chair will move, that kind of thing. And when something like that happens, we've noticed that there's a spike 3 times the background of radiation, ionizing radiation, stuff you measure with a Geiger counter. And we've also seen changes in the electromagnetic field, the geomagnetic field. It'll shift by hundreds of milligauss. And then but then we also have lately figured out that we occasionally get, if the sensor's close enough, and I'm going to get into that too. If the sensor is close enough to the point source of the manifestation, let's say, we'll get a EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, and it's a spike, bam, and it's done. We've had that happen to us where it's completely taken out a whole block of. It was so strong of an EMP, it took out every piece of electronic, battery operated equipment we had.
Wow.
And that in itself is indicative. There's 3 things there, and that kind of plays into a theory that my personal theory about the interactive activity is the whole. A lot of people don't like to hear this because you start mixing, the Einstein's theory of relativity and in with the metaphysical, and that's and they don't like that too. The general public just can't wrap their head around it. But the thing that we're kind of looking at is that it could be an Einstein-Rosen bridge has formed when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the Einstein-Rosen bridge is a wormhole.
Right.
And if you look at Einstein and Rosen came up with this mathematical concept that said that these things are possible. Now, here's the funny thing. Nobody's ever seen one. Nobody has ever seen one. And but we're starting to see evidence of them more and more and more. And we don't have enough to be statistically significant yet, because as well as I do, interactive activity is very hard to pin down. Mm-hmm. And you might, we're talking less than 1% of the activity that gets experienced by people. So, that's kind of what we're looking at. And that's kind of the direction I'm going for this interactive activity. Now, for the non-interactive activity, we're seeing environmental factors. A lot of times the environmental factors like temperature, barometric pressure, and humidity, all 3 are pretty much the same. It's the same kind of conditions. If we're in this house with these conditions, then we could actually, we might be able to predict that something might happen that we might capture on audio. Usually it's audio. And the funny thing is, though, is that you can't really get into the prediction of this kind of stuff, because then you start introducing what's called confirmation bias, where you expect something to happen, so it does happen, and it's like you break all the rules of scientific integrity by doing that. So we just go in and collect a bunch of data, and we look at it after the fact, and then we start to see if we can find the correlations then. Now, the funny thing that I said I was going to bring up was that, yes, we've seen these two kinds of things. Well, it turns out we have over 2 terabytes of data, and this is text data. So that's huge amounts of text data from all these different sensors. And that's just in the last 14 years. So
Wow.
We've got that much data. So we had initially had a member that used to be part of NASA, Langley, that was doing data analysis for one of the probes out there, and she looked at all of our data, did a holistic look at all of our data, and pretty much told us that there could be 100 different causes for this, and several of them could happen at the same time. Now, you think about how hard that's going to be to pin down.
Right. Oh
So
my God. Yeah.
we were kind of crestfallen for a little bit, but then it occurred to us that if we just pick a direction to go, then we can identify one of these causes at a time, and maybe they'll start. Several of them will fall into place, as figure out one that explains this one and that explains that one, that kind of stuff. So we've started looking at it. We're taking it one piece at a time. And that's the way you have to do any kind of scientific study. You have to start at the beginning. You can't start in the middle. You can't start at the end, and that's kind of how we're operating. So
I got to ask you, from the paranormal field, from the paranormal outsiders out there, have you guys gotten any kind of blowback where it's like, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about? I mean, because I know when I'm teaching ethics, when I'm going and I'm trying to go and say, listen, just because you heard something doesn't mean that it's this. Just, it could be, a discarnate voice in this day and age could be a shortwave radio that's been picked up on an I-beam, or people don't realize about acoustic echoes. I mean, you and I know about acoustic echoes because of our work within the Civil War research that we've done. So, and let's face it, cell towers, all of these things that can affect EMF, and these, our cheap little Timu K2 meters that causes them to pin. These things can go and travel hundreds of miles. People don't realize that there's so many other different causes out there. So, have you guys had any blowback from dedicated investigators who are using this equipment, but they feel that you guys are trying to discredit what they're doing?
Well, the answer to that is yes. I'm going to give you an example of it. We're actually, I know you probably know who Kenny Biddle is.
Yes.
He came, and he's turned out. I met him for the first time at the Hanover Tavern Paracon, and the guy is just the nicest guy, but he is a skeptic, and he's going to make you explain what you just said, right? Well, we do that too. And we were at that same Paragon a couple of years ago. Paracon, sorry, not Paragon. I'm thinking math homework now. But I was looking at some stuff away from our table, and we had one of our members' daughter was sitting there at the table looking at a book. And in our table, we don't sell anything. We just have a picture of us and something else, that's pretty much it. And some business cards. So she's sitting there, and this lady comes up to her and goes, "Oh, you guys are that skeptic group. You guys suck." That kind of stuff,
Oh,
and
and
did this to a teenage girl.
Yeah.
And so that teenage girl looks up at him and says, "We trust the science, not the blinky lights." and went down and started reading their book again. That was the most beautiful thing. We have a shirt that says that now, but it's it was just amazing. So
I love that.
every time we go to that Paracon, we wear that shirt. So.
Oh my God. But you know, it's so true, Brad, because I think the problem is being a spiritualist historian that I am, I see the ebb and flow of the cult of believers. And I do know that the cult of believers will go and believe whatever happens to be the current fad or explanation. So, I mean, let's face it, TV has presented all these wonderful little things out there, you know, all these little gizmos and stuff that you can go and you can buy cheap, go and play with. And that's what people want to see. I know the worst public investigations that where people complained were the ones that were the truest, the ones that didn't depend on that, or somebody like me going, "Oh my God, there's a man in the corner there, and I think he's got gas or something." You know that. I mean, this is what people want to see. That people expect to see that, and I think that's a shame. I really do, and I think that's a shame. When we talk about skeptics, let's talk about skeptics. You guys are not skeptics. Nope. You guys are more debunkers. Now, well, okay, let me. Oh no, I want you to explain that. The reason why I'm saying that is the fact that you guys are not precluding that it's paranormal in nature, but you're trying to go and make sure that the evidence that's collected is correct. I know some really great skeptics. I know people that are out there going, no, you got to be honest. Let's. What you're doing is doesn't make sense. Blah blah blah. You can't prove it. But my friend Calvin Von Crush will turn around and say, however, if there's something out there, and Joe Nichols, he's another one, but the late Joe Nichols told me personally, if there's something that I cannot explain scientifically or as a magician, then I'll believe it. And to me, that spoke volumes. That means that this person is open to everything. This is the person that you want to be your skeptic. This is the person that you want to work with. Unlike, let's say, the amazing Randy, who is just turning around and, just throwing money out there trying to go and disprove everybody, just for publicity's sake. So, okay, I'm going to throw the ball back to you. I'm sorry, but I had to get that out about skeptics.
Well, the whole debate, we don't really, that's not what we do. We're not debunking. What we do is we do everything by experimental design. We don't go into a situation trying to debunk it, which it is in itself a form of confirmation bias. That is, you're automatically assuming that it is not something, right? So what we do is, we basically we have a theory, right? That something's about something. We develop a hypothesis for that, and then we'll design an entire experiment for that hypothesis. And then as we design the experiment, we go and only collect the data needed for the experiment. We don't go and shotgun a thing. We don't throw a bunch of cat balls out there and a bunch of REM pods and what have you. We don't do that.
Don't start me on cat balls.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a box full of those. Yeah, but
I found the box in my workroom the other day. I have no idea how they even got there, but that's another story.
But anyway, we run the experiment. We collect the data we want to collect for the experiment. Then we draw the conclusions. The situation how this works in the scientific method is that if we draw a conclusion that doesn't really match the hypothesis, then we've got to do it over again, or we have to tweak it and do it over again. Science is an evergreen process. It isn't just one and done. That you're hearing about that all the time, where people say, right now that the science behind certain things is bogus because they were wrong initially. No, that's not it. They got more data, which allowed them to move a different direction. And
Right.
that's how science works. And a lot of people just don't understand that. And it's we've been educating the people as we go. We try really hard to explain it. You know, we don't want to offend anybody because a belief structure is a wonderful thing, especially if you're going through a trying time and
Exactly.
suffering trauma. It is a wonderful thing. However, a belief structure in itself can destroy your ability to think critically.
Yes, it can. I agree 100% with that.
And it can do that. So you have to be very careful about how you handle that. And what we do, you know, we collect all this data, you know, and we're running the experiments that we run. We find locations to run the experiments at. Sometimes we'll run the experiment at somebody's in somebody's garage because it doesn't really need to go to a site anywhere to do this, right? So we'll run these experiments. We collect all this data, and then we draw the conclusions. And sometimes we even publish a few papers on this stuff. And you know, there's 3 out there on academia.com that are mine on various things. And our vice president Jack Trammell has some papers out there. He's a sociologist, so he was looking at it from the soft data side. And here's the funny thing: I talk about data, but for me, it's hard data because of my chemistry background.
Right.
But there's soft data, and soft data is every bit as important. You know, because then you start getting into the sociology and the psychology of what's going on around people. So, you know, all that stuff is important, and it all works together. All that data works together, the soft and the hard data, it all works together. You know, if you think about somebody that believes that dust bunny on his camera is his identical friend, right? He honestly believes that. Well, at that point, as soon as you know, we can't say it's not, but at the same time, we can provide, you know, examples of how that's
Right.
really a dust bunny.
No, I agree
And
with you.
you know, we have all these examples, and because of that, we can't really trust photography unless we see what's being photographed with our own eyes. That's what we talk. You know, we're not going out trying to debunk the fact that this guy's
Mm-hmm.
that this orb is this guy's, you know, dead uncle. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to say, well, maybe it could be this. If there are other options for it, then you almost have to not. Yeah, you need to push that away until you have other corroborating data to show that it might be something else. And that's how we approach these things. We're not trying to make anybody mad, though we do. And almost like it's in my job description to make people mad. But
Welcome to my world. Welcome to my
yeah.
world. Believe me,
But
you
anyway,
know.
that's how we operate. We're not trying to make anybody mad, Tim.
Well, you know, Brad, it's funny because the fact that I'm not going to say enemies, but I'm going to say that I've dismayed many of the spiritualists that I have worked with over the years, the churches that I've worked with, and love this a lot of the love and lighters because of the fact that I'm not swallowing a lot of the dogma that's being given to me. And all I'm doing is saying, listen, this is my experience, and this is this is what happens. This is what friends of mine who know about all what's happening, the natural phenomena, or let's say, like we talk about short waves and all that, and frequencies and energy, they've explained it to me. And the one thing that I found along the way is when you have a true believer, you're never going to change their mind, which is number one. And that's fine. And belief systems are good, like you said, especially during times of trauma, solace, loss. These are all things that are great. However, the problem comes in is when you start getting people who abuse that. And that's something where I think what you guys are doing is so, so, so important. Have you had to go and have and I'm trying to think of the proper way to describe this. Have you ever had to go into a location after a gaggle of paranormal people and psychics have gone in, and I mean, I've done this, and I've walked into these places where all these people have said there's something evil, blah blah blah. There's demons in your basement or whatever, and you walk in, you have to say, this is not the evidence I found. What have you're shaking your head? You got to tell me about it, because this is something that really I you know what, I have no hair, but the reason why I don't have hair is because you see you're almost
Yeah, a
there.
little bit.
You got a little bit, but it's so frustrating to me that people will take these assumptions and they will in place they'll put in their own religious dogma and force it down somebody's throat who may be, afraid or fear based, and they make situations worse. Where I think what you guys do is totally the opposite.
Right. We got asked, because we don't do home visits anymore. We're sticking strictly to the research. And hey, Peg, thanks for that. But one we got called in though to a guy called us and wanted us to come down, and because he thought he had a demon in his house. And after hearing his story, we thought we really need to go down there, because there's a problem. He had another group come in, and this other group had gone in and had pictures of dust bunnies, dust orbs, all over the place, and claimed that those were the demons that were haunting his house. So when we went in there, the first thing we did was I went around and I found, we found some really some interesting prescriptions on the table in there, and his wife would not. She kept her mouth shut around him, and it turns out he had some traumatic head injury, and because of that, he was on. And we had those prescriptions. We had sent pictures of those. Actually, texted the titles and pictures to one of our MD member, our internal medicine person, and that person said that told us what they were. They were some serious antipsychotic medications.
I've had that. Yeah.
Now here's where you start here's the whole. This isn't just an integrity issue on the fact that this other team said what they said to this guy who was going to kill himself. It wasn't just an integrity issue. It was more of a fraud and negligence issue. And because you can't, if you go in and you do that, you have violated. Ethically, ethics. You violated that. Morals. You violated the morals.
Yes, you have.
You're telling a guy that's on some severe psychotic medications that he's got a demon in his house. All right. Now that's just not right in any way, shape, or form. So we were able to talk to the wife, and we calmed the guy down and told him that we didn't think there was anything going on in there. And he said that he goes, why is it when I lay in bed, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll see something at the foot of my bed. Well, we looked at the side of his bed, and he had one of those old 1970s clock radios that was pushing out almost a Gauss of magnetic field.
Wow. And
so I said, there's your problem. And so we moved that away from his bed, and we never got a report from him since. But that was just an example of that. And that whole negligence and fraud thing, I get on my soapbox about all the time, because they're starting to litigate that across the country.
Yes, they are.
You're going to find this entire field. You're going to find, because of idiots like that, and I'm not going to mince words, you're going to find that the entire field is going to get regulated. You're going to find it, and you're going to have a license to do it. And
insurance, liability insurance.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have all of that.
And that's why we've stepped out of the investigative side of it. We're sticking strictly to the research side of it. And because of that, we have research subjects. We have our own independent review board that reviews our, if we use human subjects and that kind of stuff. We follow all the rules that academia follows. So we do all that stuff, and we just do the research, and that keeps us out of that realm, so to speak. We don't have clients. We don't call anybody clients. That's crazy. And then, doing investigations and some of this litigation, they're claiming that these people are PIs, unlicensed PIs, private investigators, and they're getting in trouble over it. So why do you do that? Now, we have our own liability policy. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We have money from various entities, corporate entities, and which allows us to do certain experiments that we couldn't do before. And we also have our own set of bylaws and ethics guidelines and things like that. All of our people have to go through a regimen of training that we have on a learning management system before they can even step foot on a site with us and collect data. So we are protected. We have our own insurance. Our insurance on that is just, it's so important to have that, because that protects us and the site, So
Exactly.
that's all super important. You got to operate, since we're doing all this stuff in the academic realm, we have to operate as if we are an academic institution, which is what we do.
So many times, I think what happens is we have so many well-meaning people out there. And I mean, I go to a lot of conferences and I speak a lot of places, and these people are just lovely. They're just wonderful people. But just because you're well-meaning doesn't mean, let's say somebody's having an appendix attack, doesn't mean just because you're well-meaning you should cut into that person to remove their appendix. And this is something that I have been preaching for a while. Stay out of some of these cases. I don't know how many people want to jump in for demonic cases, and they want all this bad stuff to happen to them, and all this, they're dying for it. And I often wonder, what is it psychologically? And then I thought to myself, it's a thrill ride. It's a total thrill ride. And that's what they want.
Exactly right.
That's
right. I mean, it's okay to be an experiencer.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it's not okay, but don't say that you're don't say that you're an investigator. Don't say that you're, that you're doing research, when all you're doing is going out and getting the experience.
Exactly.
And that's what plays into all those toys that you see them use too.
Exactly.
It plays right into that, because that's instant gratification right there.
Mm-hmm.
So that plays right into that. I mean, it takes a certain skill set to be able to do not just the data collection, but to do the analysis, because that's the hard part. We always say data never lies, which is true. Data will not lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's the interpretation of that data which will get you in trouble.
Exactly.
And that's where, if you don't have the skill set to interpret the data that you just collected, like, I am not an electromagnetic engineer. So magnetism and that kind of stuff, I know enough about that to be dangerous. We have an electromagnetic engineer that works with the Navy.
That's perfect.
And that can look at that data and tell us whether we're idiots or not. And we do our own internal peer review, because we have different subject matter experts in everything we do: magnetic field, temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, all the medical stuff, all the psychological stuff, all the sociological stuff. We have different subject matter experts to review what we do, just to make sure that we're not being stupid. And contrary to popular belief, I don't know everything.
Well, listen, I think you know a lot more than me, so that's why I defer to you for a lot of this. Well, it's so funny, because when you said about having someone to interpret, I can look at a picture. Somebody sends me, I can look at a picture and I can say, well, it might be X, Y, and Z. Inevitably, the next message or email that comes to me will be, but is it a spirit? I can't say yes. I'm never going to say yes. I'm going to say
that's us.
it's interesting. I can't say yes. I don't know that much about, back in the day when I had my own dark room and, and I developed my own film, and it was a little bit different story then. I mean, I was part of the process. Now, in this digital age, I can't tell sometimes. I know there's a difference between glass and plastic lenses, and I understand about lens flare, and I understand a lot about this apertures and your speed, ISO, but am I an expert in digital photography? Absolutely not. I will send it out. I don't think twice about it. Same thing with audio. I'll send it out. And I love the fact that a friend of mine goes, well, I can't tell you it's a ghost, but it's X amount of hertz. It's this hertz. This is the hertz that, humans hear. This is this. And he dissects it. And now I can sit there and say, well, I can say what it's not. So that is the interpretation. Now it's my interpretation of it. So it's so important. People are not getting that yet. And I think there's something. I think the scariest thing that I've ever seen is I went to a public location, and this gentleman opened up a book full of orbs, and he must have had 20, 30 photos of these orbs. And I just, it was one of those things where he was an older gentleman, and I just said, I'm not going to go, and I'm not going to bust your balloon on this. So I went, that's interesting. And he goes, well, what do you think as a medium? And it's like, well, I can't tell you because I wasn't there, or blah. I did a sidestep on it. I want to ask you, because I have never had really any kind of luck with cameras, any kind of video equipment. Never. I've never caught anything outside of a cold when I was out in some of these locations. But let me just throw it right at you. What do you think of a lot of the evidence that we see? Can it be manipulated by AI? Can it be manipulated so easily to the point where, or so professionally to the point where it's hard to discern it, and you really have to know what you're looking for in order to go and say, well, this is a fraud, this is a fake, especially in this day and age. And we see it with all the political stuff out there. We see it with so many different things that, social media has spread across the world.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just nailed it. The video, we get people that send us videos and pictures all the time, and we refuse to review those videos and pictures because we don't know what environment they were taken in. We don't know if they've been manipulated.
Exactly.
And so we can't tell, we won't be able to tell if they, well, sometimes if they've just gone out and used a ghost app, it's obvious. But because it's like, there's a demon standing behind their 2-year-old daughter looking.
You mean this $20 app that I put on here isn't real?
Yeah.
I just you know what? I have one on there, but I do it for fun. I just love what comes up, and I'm always like, oh, gee, you're telling me I'm in a prison. Oh, is there something with the GPS in there? But it's just it passes the time sometimes when I'm bored.
Well, because of that, we can't really get into, we don't have any way to analyze that video. Exactly. Because if it got manipulated before it came to us, then we're not seeing the raw file. So unless we can get a hold of the raw file or get a hold of the raw picture file too, there's no way that we can do that. So we just don't, as a matter of course, unless it's something that we collected ourselves and we attach that to whatever project we're on and we have all that data, and it's all the raw files, all that stuff's in a database. And we do have, you say you haven't caught anything on video. We thought we only had, like, out of 14 years, we only had like 10 instances of something that might be anomalous on video. And turns out we have more than that, because we our president actually has come up with an algorithm that will actually review our video for us. Because if you sit and stare at a video, like if you have 16 cameras and it's 8 hours per camera, you're going to wear yourself out. So he has this algorithm that looks and finds anomalies for us. And
Wow,
lo and
that's
behold,
amazing.
we go back and review them in real time. I mean, well, he'll catch them in real time, but we'll go back and he'll mark what frame they are in the video. So we'll go back to that section of frames and look at that. And lo and behold, we've seen some things there that we just cannot explain. And
That's
we
fascinating.
totally missed it. Totally missed it. And we used to make fun. You met Kenny, he's our treasurer, but you met Kenny Newsom before. He was part of our group that was at Shenandoah Crossings.
Yes,
And
yes.
he, he used to always say, I never catch anything on my cameras. Well, it turns out we do. So we're finding things
Wow.
as we go back and look at these other videos and stuff that's being processed through this thing. We're finding more stuff because it's not just our tired eyes trying to look at it. It's this algorithm finding it and then letting us go back to review it, which saves a lot of time, a lot of heartache, and a lot of tiredness. And I will tell you this, being part of this organization, because of what we do and how we do it, has have jumped leaps and bounds ahead in doing data analysis and video analysis and audio analysis with things like that. And these are all being generated out of necessity because of what we're doing. And we're doing this earnestly. We're doing this because we need to do it, that kind of thing. In order to meet our mission goals, we got to have this stuff. So, that's the way it's supposed to work. You go out there and science is, as you start doing the science and you need this, you need this, you need this, and it's a mother of necessity, it's created. And lo and behold, that's how we're operating. And we've also got a business structure set up where we're part of Google Workspace for nonprofits. And we're using Gemini to do some data analysis for us, which is the AI there. And it'll go out, and it's just a basic. We go out and it'll find anomalies, and we go back and review the anomalies on just the data, not video and audio, but just the data that we've collected. So we have it do that too, and it saves a lot of time. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that that our organization. Wait a minute, there's a question there.
Oh, Commander Bill Randall from the USS Edson in Bay City, Michigan. When he speaks of data, is he referring to the same things we've seen and heard, meaning a lot of the physical stuff that we experienced when we were doing a project together on the USS Edson, which was like, it felt like something passing through us and that sort of thing.
Experiences are data.
Well, okay, expound on that. That's interesting.
Because if you have an experience, you have now. If you have an experience and you record that you've had that experience, and the time and the date, and you get all this other correlating data around you, you just have a block of data, including the experiential, and that right there. If somebody goes to that same spot and experiences the same thing over and over and over again, then that's going to say something. And so experiences are data. It's how people handle those experiences after the fact, which ruins it, and but I think the experiences, that's the whole sociological and psychological aspect of the soft data that I was talking about.
Perfect. That, what? That was the greatest explanation for that. I could not have done that, Brad. Thank you. And I'm going to steal that, by the way. Just let you know, when I'm working with other people, I'll give you credit for it, but I will steal that. Now,
well, I'm recording this right now for the copyright, so I'm just.
This is what I love about you, Brad. Now, you know what? For people who are out there in the field, do you have any suggestions of what they should be doing to, let's say, log data or really try to look at the fine points of, let's say, an investigation or an experiment that they're working with while out in the field?
Well, first, before you go into the field, understand what you're trying to do before you even get there. Understand, if I'm going to go there and I want to see if that apparition shows up, let's say, right? So if I want to do that, then they really need to design their own experiment, so to speak. You could do that without being a scientist. You could design an experiment on your own. And, it's like basically you would, the piece of equipment you would need is a video recorder or a still camera and yourself. That's pretty much all you need if all you're looking for is a visible apparition. So at that point, you go there and you get your videos and your pictures and stuff. But always remember, if you're not a subject matter expert on photography or videography, you need to get somebody that is to do peer review, like to examine what you got.
Agreed.
All right, because they might see something you didn't see, and sometimes they see things that are just artifacts of the camera, let's say.
Right.
But
right.
sometimes they see things that they can't explain, and they will tell you that. So that's why it's always important to do things like that way and record everything over time. Make sure you have a timestamp for everything. And if you can get environmental data around you, weather data, stuff like that for the same time period, all of that is important. And yeah, Kenneth, I tell you, the peer review is something that is totally misunderstood in this field. Peer review doesn't mean that you have somebody that's a paranormal investigator come in and look at what you did. That's not what it means. If you're collecting environmental data, you need to have somebody that is versed in environmental science to look at your data. That's peer review. Or you need somebody that's an audio specialist to listen to your audio, or a linguist to find out what it's saying, because
very important
try to interpret.
Yes.
What the voice is saying. If we hear a voice, we just say we have an anomalous voice. Sometimes we'll get a linguist involved. Now, we don't have one of those in our organization, but we have access to one. Actually, multiple ones. So we reach out to a linguist and we say, hey, can you tell us what this said? And that's how we found out that at one site, some lady was speaking French at a site. And we didn't even know that the site was built by French Huguenots. So it was kind of interesting that correlation happened. But that's peer review. And like my wife does peer review all the time. She's a microbiologist. You met her when we had that meatball sub over at Anna's.
Oh my God, that was a great lunch. Your family is so sweet. I got to tell you, your family is so sweet.
Well, they just had to walk across the street because we live right there. But Jenny is a microbiologist, and she does peer review all the time on on the aspects that she knows about on these papers. If she doesn't know about a certain aspect, she's not going to peer review that aspect. So that's how that works. And a lot of people in this field don't understand that. They'll have this paranormal investigator review what this paranormal investigator does. Well, problem is they're both operating on a similar belief structure, so that doesn't work. So if you're collecting data, you got to have somebody that's versed in the data that's being collected to be able to review it.
Agreed, 100%. The other thing that comes up is jealousy.
Yes.
It's a big, I hate to say it, it's a base human emotion, and this is why so many people don't publish any of their evidence, but they sit on it. They don't do anything. They don't go and have it tested. They don't go and have a peer review, and they sit on it because too many people are out there that don't know, that aren't specialists in it, and they're all going to go and they're all going to say, well, it's not this, you're lying, and it becomes a big dramatic mess. And I am just like, I sit there and think to myself, what a shame that is, because they may have found one little piece of evidence that might be able to go and solve a mystery or whatever. That one little piece of evidence, people are just, you don't see it.
They hoard it. And
yes,
we call them hoarders. And what happens there? We also, excuse me, not only is there jealousy, but there's also fear of ridicule.
Yes.
And people are afraid that if somebody peer reviews their stuff, they're going to be made to look silly, which is not the intent of peer review at all. They're not trying to make you look silly. You know, you're only going to look silly if you collect a piece of data and claim it actually says there's a ghost there,
Exactly.
which
Well,
you
see,
just made a
that's
claim.
it. That's it. That's 100%,
And
because it
so,
drives me insane that people will go and be they don't want to be torn down. And it's like with me, I don't care. Here's the thing. I got a piece, I got an EVP. Boom. Tell me it's wrong and I will be happy, because Brad, we talked about this over lunch. You should be a truth seeker, not a truth hoarder or hider or whatever. You should
yeah.
be out there looking for the truth. And there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I got this. What is it? And then have somebody say, oh, well, it sounds like somebody's stomach gurgling or whatever. It can explain it. To me, I would rather have that. To me, it means more to me that somebody explained something to me that I may have captured than to go on the premise that, oh, it is A, B, and C, D. To me, I've never understood that mentality.
Well, you know, it's the funny thing is too is if you go out on the limb and say something's a ghost or something's a demon or something's a spirit, okay, that's at best a theory.
Yes, you're
Don't
right.
claim it's a fact because you don't know. That's where people get in trouble, and that's when they get ridiculed by that they could be ridiculed. The
Exactly.
If you just go ahead and say you got something anomalous and don't claim that that's a ghost, because you can't say that really. Um, you may believe it is, but at best you have a theory, and just say it's a theory.
I
My
agree.
theory is that this is the spirit of so and so. Okay, that's a theory. That's perfectly legitimate. And if you just say stuff like that, then you stay out of this whole fear. You don't have to worry about being ridiculed. That's like a
Exactly.
safety. You could consider that a safety net, but that's how it's supposed to operate.
I
If you think
agree.
about scientific integrity to begin with, I mean, you got certain principles. Let's say you got honesty, transparency is one. You
Huge.
got to
Yes.
share your findings and stuff. Reproducibility is the other one. Accountability. That's where a lot of people get in trouble because they're not accountable for their own actions out there. They say things that they say things as fact, which are actually theories and stuff like that. And also, you got to protect your data collection and what you're doing from inappropriate influence, aka a belief structure, influencing influencing what you're collecting.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's kind of how scientific integrity works. And what a lot of people do is they'll fabricate stuff. They'll suppress the data, which we just talked about. They'll manipulate the research to meet whatever their belief structure is. There's no transparency or accountability, that kind of stuff. So that's scientific integrity in a nutshell. And
I agree.
let's see. This is a long one.
The larger issue is human perception that are involved in the phenomena. This phenomena questions of. I'm not sure even. I can't.
Ontology.
There it is. And creating controls in your design methodologies. I'm so glad that you're doing this research. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kenneth. Yeah, we operate just like any other academic institution will operate, and we have a really good role model right here in Virginia. It's the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and those guys, yes, they do more psychological research versus what we're doing, but it's still the same principles.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to, it's really nice that they're here because they have a really cool library, by the way. But we tend to try to operate like any other academic institution would operate.
Now, what are your upcoming projects? Let us know. Let us know what your upcoming projects are, because to me, you know what, I'm blessed. The Kling brothers brought me in to Virginia for that one event, and I got a chance to meet you. And I came back the next year, and we really got to know each other better. And I'll tell you what, I'm blessed for that because I learned so much just by listening to you. It's amazing.
Well, excuse me. We have upcoming, well, we're going to be collecting data at a site coming up here next month. That's an old plantation. That's got all the original house and outbuildings. The house was built in 1711.
Wow.
You know, it's a
Beautiful.
It's actually, we're going to go and do that, but we're not only are we going to be checking for ways to measure for an Einstein Rosen bridge, but we're also going to be looking at collecting more environmental data around the house to see if we can do something about this. We need to try to find the cause for this non-interactive activity. Also, though, we're going to be sharing the site with friends from MUFON. I don't know if you're familiar with MUFON.
Oh yes. Oh yes, I am.
They're actually a couple of those folks are going to come down and be watching the skies while we're doing what we're doing in the house. And there's some real interesting synchronicity going on between the UFO world, the cryptid world, and the world that we affectionately call paranormal. The data we're all collecting seems to match up. And if you watch Skinwalker Ranch at all,
oh yes, yes, I do.
Notice that they're collecting the same identical data we are, and we have been for 14 years. So actually longer than that, since 2000. Our 25th anniversary is this year. But because of that, we're starting to make inroads with certain people in the UFO community in the UAP community that think that there might be some synergy there. So we're going to share some time with them. We're also going to have the following month. We're going to have a big in service for our people at St. Albans Sanatorium.
Nice,
in Radford.
Very nice.
It's basically it's continuing education for people that do what we do. So we're going to be doing that for our organization, and we rented out the whole place for the weekend. So we're going to do that, and then in August we're at another location up on the Potomac collecting data, just like we're doing in next month, and in September we actually may have an open month, believe it or not. But that allows us to do this data crunching that we need to do. So we can't just keep going to places and collect data. We got to do the analysis too. So that's always the hard part. And then thank you, Bill. And but then also in September, the Labor Day weekend, I'll be at Dragon Con speaking at Dragon Con down in Atlanta, and talking about exactly what we're talking about now. So that's what I do down there. And other than that, we have a bunch of stuff taking our time in October at different Preservation Virginia sites throughout the whole month of October, where we show people what we do at each of these sites.
Phenomenal.
That's what we got coming up.
Brad, thank you so much for being on the show. I have to tell you that I've been looking forward to this. I have sat here and thought to myself, how am I going to be able to keep up with this guy? First of all, because you are, I don't care what anybody says, you're very imposing to know you and to speak to you. And I love the fact that you're able to go and present this information so that everybody can understand it. And that's the true mark of a genius. That is the true mark of a genius.
I don't know.
Oh, no. And I'll tell your wife that too.
I'm sure she'd love to hear that. Hey, don't forget.
That's it.
There's one more thing that I'm involved in.
Oh,
and it's just a recent thing. The Skeleton Key Society.
I was bringing that up. Yes,
the Kling brothers have put together this group of us that are going to look at some of the issues, so to speak, that are in the paranormal field, and we're going to discuss those and debate those. And you can go to exactly the site, the SkeletonKeySociety.org.
.org, yes.
And sign up to participate. And there's a core group of us. You'll see our picture on there. My ugly mug's on there. But Dustin Perry's part of that group.
Yes.
Brian Cano is part of that group. Of course, the Klings are part of that group. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting time because we may hurt some feelings, but some of this stuff needs to be said.
Well, as a matter of fact, I just talked with Barry today, and we had talked about this core group a couple of years ago. And I'm so happy to hear that it is starting to go forward. And I think this is what's so important. This is something that we really need to have open discussions about, because too many people are believing the fake things that we see on TV. And if anybody that has ever done reality TV will tell you that production companies can put you in a situation. You may not be lying, you may not be faking, but they can put you into a situation where they can affect a certain emotional outburst or whatever. And I've preached that for years. And the Kling brothers, I've known them for so many years, and I really enjoy their fresh approach to this. And I think it's so important. So I think the dialogue needs to go and be, really be able to go and be spread. As a matter of fact, I even joined today immediately after I talked with Barry, because this is something that is so important. Very, very important.
Well, I'm glad you joined.
Listen. Usually I say I wouldn't join any organization that would have me as a member. When I found out you were a member, I had to join. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
Brad, thank you so much. Stay on the air so I can thank you properly off the air. And I appreciate all the work that you guys do. Please tell everybody that I said hello. You know what? I have to say that when I met the team, I've never met, as let's say, as a psychic medium, I have never met more warm people who are open-minded, but very focused on their work anywhere. And I think that the CPRI is one of the leading teams that I've ever have researched about, investigated about, and met personally. So please make sure you tell everybody that I just love them so much. I really do. And I'm so thankful that they went and you guys are doing what you're doing. So stay tuned there. Just a couple seconds there. And I promise I'll have you back there. I'll have you off by dinner. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Tim. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on. Brad Bradley is probably one of the most influential people that I know within that field. He has taught me so much. He has made me open my eyes. And I'm not going to lie about this. He has made me open my eyes to so many different things. Now, I've always questioned, and what do I always tell my ethics classes? Question everything. Don't take anything as as truth, as gospel, because you don't know, especially history, you have to question everything. And I love what he does. I love what this team does, because I think they're the ones that will make the big breakthrough. I think they're the ones that will go and be able to start putting out all the conditions, all the data, whatever it is that causes things to work and react in the paranormal field. So, guys, thank you so much. Listen, we will see you next week. Where else? Black Cat Lounge, where they meet. Next to the dumpster transfer station. Be good. Be kind to each other, guys. I know it's hard, but be kind to each other. Ciao, babies. Take care. And we will be back very, very, very soon. And I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Good night.